Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Tuesday, the 7th of May, 2019. And tonight's topic, Ohio State bill would add sales tax to gold and silver sales. We're going to discuss this proposal in the Ohio legislature. Now, currently, Ohio does not have a sales tax on gold and silver. It's had it in the past. We're going to go through the history of the Ohio taxing of precious metals. We'll talk about the CoinGate scandal and also talk about why they are attempting to pass this law. And also, I think SD Bullion is leading a campaign against this. We'll talk about that. Okay, and also we're going to take a look at some interesting Bitcoin mining stories as well as some Trump turmoil. Now, the markets today, speaking of turmoil, we're down because it looks like China deal off again. Dow Jones was down almost 2%, down 473 points. Did dip below 26,000, closed at 25,965. NASDAQ was down 2%, down about 160 points, down to 79.63. And the S&P 500 down 1.65%. That was down about 50 points to 28.84. Precious metals, however, did not seem to catch a bid even despite the market turmoil. Gold was up about $3 to $12.84. Silver was essentially flat to $14.88. Cryptocurrencies had some follow through on their big day yesterday. Bitcoin currently looks like it's trading just under 5,900. Just about 5,900, up about 3.25. Ethereum at 173. That's flat over the last 24 hours. Bcash flat at 291. Litecoin flat at 75. And Ethereum Classic, which is Seamus's favorite, at 567, and that's down. Well, let's start with this Ohio State bill that would add sales tax to gold and silver sales. Now, currently, as I mentioned, the Ohio State does not have a tax on selling coins as long as they are, let me see, I have the language here from the legislature. There's no sale on investment metal bullion. Investment coins are exempt from tax. Investment bullion is defined as any bullion described in Section 408M3B of the Internal Revenue Code. And investment coin is defined as any coin comprised of gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. So that's the current state of play in Ohio. Now, it wasn't always what was going on in Ohio. They also have a tax for foreign dealers doing a certain amount of business in the state. And that's one of the reasons, I suppose, that SD Bullion is not happy about this either. Anytime you have to tax your customers, then it's a nuisance, not only from a bookkeeping perspective, but it also could curtail sales. There are many people, I've gotten a few emails today, people saying that maybe they wouldn't buy precious metals if they had to pay a 6 to 8% tax on them. And that's pretty much, I think, what the amounts that they're talking about adding to the 5.7 to 8%, 5.75 to 8% tax hike or tax increase, or just adding tax onto the sale of precious metals. But let's go back and look at why they're doing this. Now, anytime you add a tax, government generally just looks at it very myopically that, well, if we add a tax, then we collect that tax revenue and we're better off. And of course, there's the Laffer curve, which talks about, well, if you don't tax anything and you tax at 0%, well, then you get 0% revenue. However, if you tax at 100%, you're also not going to have any revenue because no one's going to work on the income tax or no one's going to buy anything with 100% sales tax. So you get nothing. And according to the Laffer curve, which makes sense, there is somewhat of a sweet spot for taxes where if you raise them too much, you actually get less. If you obviously don't have taxes, you get nothing. Now, with sales tax, it's not quite the same curve as a income tax because people will still buy things even if there's a tax on them, but generally tax is a disincentive to buying. And that's one of the reasons why governments have instituted taxes on cigarettes and other items like alcohol. because they call those sin taxes. They realize there's going to be some demand there. It's not really going to be curtailed by taxing, so they figure those are taxes they can get away with. People are kind of addicted to cigarettes and alcohol. They're going to buy it anyway. So it's a safe bet for a government to be able to boost taxes and make revenue when they tax items that are addictive. Now, we talked about gold derangement syndrome and silver derangement syndrome, but that's more of a joke. There's not that many people that are addicted and must buy precious metals. I mean, it's a discretionary item. Maybe for some it's a must-have item, but of course, as we've seen in India, when the prices rise in India or they put too much tax on it, the Indians step back. I mean, it is a good in which you want to buy if it's cheap. You don't want to buy it if it's artificially inflated through taxes or if the price is going higher. Now, we know there's some different psychologies there. A lot of Americans will buy something if it's rising in price. So if the silver price were to get over 20, you'd have the FOMO, the FOMO, fear of missing out. People might want to buy more silver. But in any event, that's not what they're considering here. The government of Ohio is considering raising this tax, implementing this tax. And James Henry Anderson over at SD Bullion pointed me to this woman, Catherine Turser. And I did a little research in the Toledo Blade, which is a city in Ohio. And she is part of the government watchdog Common Cause. Now, she's in favor of this. She's in favor of this law because she thinks that it's going to put another $5.5 million in lost revenue. It's always lost revenue. It's that the fact that they're not taxing the gold and silver bullion is somehow a loss to the state, not taking into account that bullion dealers are employing people, bullion dealers are making money, they're paying taxes on their profits. But of course, they look at this as this is money that's lost, and therefore libraries and counties and transit authorities are out. And they're saying that that's at $1.6 million in addition to the $5.5 million in lost revenue. And they're saying that $1.6 million costs to local governments, libraries, and counties, and transit authorities about $1.6 million. And her quote here, this Catherine Turser woman, I think there are enough Ohioans who realize we're doomed to repeat our mistakes if we don't pay attention to our history. Now, the reason this is an interesting one, it's not just that it's common that the states are always looking to raise revenue, and you have to ask yourself, is there really that much of a business in precious metals in Ohio that they're going to pick up this significant tax gain if they go ahead and tax precious metals? And I think in the SD Bullion blog post, they made the point that, they could have other types of taxes. Not that they're advocating for taxes, but I mean, if they really wanted to make money, they could tax equity investments. There are certain states that do that. They tax dividends on the state level. Precious metals doesn't seem to be we know that it's not a big seller compared to the amount of money that flows into stocks. But they've chosen not to go there. And you wonder, why would they do that? Well, there was a thing back in 2005, a little bit earlier, a scandal called CoinGate. You're probably not familiar with this. But there was a guy. This guy's name was Tom Noe. And he lobbied for an exemption. He was a coin dealer. And he got two exemptions. One was allowing the government pensions to invest in something other than bonds. And he wanted them to invest in, you guessed it, since he was a coin dealer, his rare numismatic coins. And somehow they got an exemption, and then they invested money with this Tom Noe guy. He was connected to the Republican Party. They raised money. They put like $50 million into Noe's, Noe is his name, I don't know if it's Noe or no, into the Ohio Workers' Compensation Fund. And without getting into the details, a lot of the, they bought like a $300,000 coin, the 1855 $3 gold coin, all these rare coins, and a lot of them got lost, and a lot of the money went away. So there was a backlash against this. I mean, the public was out for blood because they put $50 million into these rare coins and numismatics and gold and silver, and next thing you know, and it's gone. Now, this has nothing to do with the law, really. There's, as I always point out, and I pointed out yesterday, when you hear our friend Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger saying there's a lot of fraud associated with Bitcoin, and now they're trying to say in the same instance here, there's a lot of fraud involved in numismatics. There's fraud involved in anything of value. It's a stupid thing to say, but yeah, that's a classic argument that they use. Look, Warren Buffett invests in Wells Fargo. I mean, there's about as much, there's so much fraud in Wells Fargo and all those big banks. It's not the point. Well, actually, they're more able to commit fraud because they run the banking system. But without getting into that, also, Heinz Ketchup is another one of Warren Buffett's friendly investments, and found out the other day, Heinz has to restate their 2016 financial reports after employee misconduct. There's fraud there. Message to Buffet, there's a lot of frauds around ketchup too. And it's a foolish argument, but yet again, that's where it lies. And CoinGate caused there to be this distaste for why shouldn't these numismatics and bullion products be tax-free. In fact, the numismatics are not tax-free. It has to be an investment product, and I believe it's only bullion now under the new law, which was signed by Governor Kasich of Ohio in, I think, 2016. So the current law does not have the tax on it at all. And so now what they're trying to do is reinstitute this, and it sounds like Common Cause is one of the leading proponents of this. And there's Republican support for this too. We haven't had a lot of conversations about CoinGate. This is in the Toledo Blade. It says House Speaker Cliff Rosenberger, who is a Republican. He confirmed the full Senate will vote on the full Senate bill today. And the date of this was, I'm reading from when they got rid of the tax in 2016. And when we think about CoinGate, we think about embezzlement and the shenanigans. And this was Kathleen Turser back then saying, but when you think about how we got here in the first place, it's because a specific investor wanted to have rules that benefited him. And that argument didn't hold sway in 2016 because logically that was fraud. It had nothing to do with there being any type of exemption. But she was complaining that the way Noah was able to commit his fraud was in 2005, the Ohio legislature repealed that exemption, allowed him to steal 13 out of $50 million. So he's now in prison. I don't think connecting the two really has nothing to do with it. Now they're just really arguing that they want the $5.5 million that they're going to somehow collect from this tax that they put in place. Somebody worked with the numbers and they figured their sweet spot is between 5.75 and 8%. And Kathleen Turner says eliminating this makes complete sense. Getting rid of the exemption. One of the things that always surprises me is how we forgot who Tom Noe is. Meaning that we should remember how we got here in the first place. We had this fraud because we had these exemptions, which is really not the case. Actually, the exemption that caused the fraud was allowing the pension funds to invest in anything but bonds in the first place and invest in numismatic coins. There was looked like some self-dealing going on there because this guy Noe owns a coin dealership and he's getting this exemption so he can then, he's a Republican, sell back to the pension funds $50 million worth. So that's what they're thinking of doing. Looks like it probably will pass. Now there is, let me get back here to the SD Bullion people. They have listed on their website a sample email if you're interested in being active in this topic. Opposition HB 166. Dear Ohio State legislatures, we politely ask you never raise taxes on precious metal bullion, coin, or bar and round purchases, and then a short letter, and then it lists all the people that are in the Ohio House and Senate. So that's what's going on there. The question is, would you buy precious metals if there was a 6 to 8% sales tax? Because I think it's different than, unless, again, if you have derangement syndrome, you will buy it no matter what the price is, and you'll insist that it's a good deal. But for a more discerning buyer, some people have told me today they would stop buying precious metals. Now, if that's the case, then they're not going to get their $5.5 million. And they're going to have harm to their economy locally, and then also whatever is brought in through online bullion dealers out of state. So I'm not quite sure this is a brilliant move in any way, shape, or form. Generally, taxes on things, I think that precious metals are a discretionary item. I'm not quite sure that... The other thing it can make bullion dealers do is just stop doing business in the state. So let me know what you guys think on this. But before we move on from this, let's get into some of the other stories. Why don't we discuss it in the comments now, and then we can do the Trump turmoil and the Bitcoin mining. Why don't we do that? See what you guys are saying while it's fresh in your minds here. All right. Pablo says now there's going to be a gold shortage. Everyone will buy gold before that tax is introduced in Ohio. Well, that's true. By the way, SD Bullion has some very good sales on at the moment. I've left a link here. And I leave this because I also get a small commission if you do indeed purchase through the links. But they have one free 2019 Silver Britannia when you buy 24 of them. That's a pretty good deal. They also have $44. When I say $44 over spot for gold eagles. They've got a lot of good deals. They have $125 over spot, $1.25 over spot for Canadian silver maple leafs as well. So they really do have... Oh, these are for proof coins, the gold eagle. Anyway, I'll leave you the link. You can check out the sales that they have there. And it does help the site out if you're interested in purchasing precious metals if you do it through those links. Okay. Let's see what you guys are saying about this. Yeah, Anne had not heard about this tax on gold. Philip is here. Why tax precious metals? They must be getting ready to go up in price. Well, that could be. Remember, they're not going to make much at the price at silver at $14. And if they kill the silver sales, they're not going to make anything. So, yeah, I guess it would make sense. But I don't see how the ledger said. They don't know. There's a list of them. They don't have any idea where precious metals are going to go. But if they did know they were going to go higher, then it would make sense. They'd be able to capture that revenue because they know that there'd be a lot of people buying. But right now, with precious metal sales down, I mean, you only have to look at the mint sales. They're not very good. I'm not sure why they think this is a, no pun intended, gold mine of tax revenue when, you might have introduced this in 2015 when precious metal sales were going through the roof. But generally, you don't tax something that isn't selling very well, but that appears to be what they're doing. Philip says tax $2 bills. Yeah, one day we're going to talk about U.S. notes, silver certificates, and Federal Reserve notes. Philip has been corresponding with me on that topic. We'll discuss that probably later in the week. And then Philip Quinn says, next thing you know, they'll be taxing mugs. That's right. And Philip is calling Toledo the People's Republic of Toledo. All right, Jack, I'm literally holding silver and gold with a 10-year outlook. All I think about is what my grandparents paid for bread back in the day, 10 cents. Now it's $4. Yet bread hasn't changed. Charlie Munger and Buffett still haven't acknowledged they know what Bitcoin is. If they did, they would be funny and their jokes would be... And their jokes because there would be truth behind their jokes. Anyone here celebrate Judas? I don't know what he was talking about. Munger saying, yeah, the Bitcoin people. I don't know, what is that? Is he one of the stock people? Well, who are the Bitcoin people? Munger said last night, the Bitcoin, well, we played the clip last night. The Bitcoin people invited me to dinner, and I always wondered, to happy hour. I always wondered what they did at happy hour, and I figured it out. They pray to their statue of Judas Iscariot, their idol. I don't know what even that means. And so Jack is asking, anyone here celebrate Judas? Jack is saying also, Sunshine Mint is in Ohio. Yeah, and as in betrayal. I don't know what Bitcoin people are betraying. I don't get it. All right, I run circles around. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? from tossing Molotovs. Both parties have their own corporate sponsors. Both are purchased. What does that mean? All right. Max is here. The Daily Coin. Howdy, everybody. Hello, Rory. Tossing Molotov. Smaulgld. Stop buying. This is to me. Stop buying from AppMex due to tax. No sales tax if you go buy from Gold Money or Gold One and they store it. Yes, I think it's if you ship it to a state that charges tax, then that dealer has to charge the tax to you, even though they're outside of your state and maybe their state doesn't have a tax. But I guess if you don't have it delivered, then you could avoid the tax, I suppose. I'm not quite sure how that works. Philip says this is because they don't want the peasants owning PMs. I don't know. I don't even think they even thought that much about it. I think someone just pushed it forward. They figured it's an easy way of getting $5 million added to the tax revenues, not even realizing that you probably won't even get that. If precious metal sales go down anyway, and they go down as a result of the sales tax, they won't get anything. All they'll do is move that business to another state. Now, interestingly enough, this is the state that has allowed its corporations and eventually citizens to pay their taxes in Bitcoin. Now, go figure. They're endorsing the use of Bitcoin to pay taxes, and yet they want to tax gold and silver. This is from November, and this law has passed and was in effect in the 2019 tax-paying season. Ohio appears set to become the first state to accept Bitcoin for tax bills, giving the technology a tacit approval it had previously lacked. That was in the Wall Street Journal. And then later we saw in Ohio, Overstock. I guess they must have some type of, I don't know if they're located there at their headquarters, but they must have some taxing obligation in Ohio. And U.S. retail giant Overstock is using Bitcoin to pay its taxes in Ohio. So very strange legislature there in Ohio. And here is the SD bullion. I guess they're appealing to zero hedge to get some greater dissemination. Please help us get the word out. Now, SD bullion is impacted by this because whatever sales they have in Ohio, they may go down. And then they're also going to have to collect tax, so it's an administrative nuisance, and they may sell less and have more work in order to sell. Now, remember, bullion dealers don't really make a lot of money. They make it all on volume. They get very little margin. It's a tough business. They really have to sell a lot. And if they're going to sell less in Ohio, and then they're going to have to create special software to figure out what the taxes are, pay them to Ohio, whatever period of time they want them, either annually or quarterly, it becomes a bit of a nuisance if the company's not set up to have those expenses, especially if they're going to make less revenue as a result of the tax. So there's their pitch there. Ohio bullion sales tax renewal, 6 to 8%. Maybe we'll get James Henry Anderson on if he's kind enough to join us again, maybe on a Saturday night silver with Smaulgld episode. See what he has to say about it. I'm sure his job is also dependent on how well SD bullion does, so I'm sure he's not in favor of this. All right. Anything else in the comments on this before we move on to our other stories of the day? We got Trump stories. We got some crypto stories. I wonder if a world of metals and digital currency is coming. Don't know. Jack Smaulgld. Of course, I would pay tax on PM. It's mine to own and hold, and the price I pay to leave the inflated currency. Well, I mean, generally that may be correct. But if the tax, and if you have to pay an 8% tax, and the currency is not depreciating 8%, you're not much better off than just holding on to the dollars. Because the problem with precious metals in the physical, like with the silver, we've talked about it, $14 an ounce. When you pay $14 an ounce, when silver spot price is $14 an ounce, the authorized purchasers from the U.S. Mint pay $2 an ounce, or $2 a coin or an ounce per coin, making the minimum charge for that coin $16. And then when the authorized purchasers then selling to the bullion dealers, they mark them up, maybe a quarter, maybe 50 cents. So you're paying 16 and a quarter, 16.50 for an ounce of silver. That's $14. You're talking about a 15 to 20% premium, and then tack on a 6 to 8% tax. It's, you know, the currency would have to be depreciating 20, 30%, and we're not really there. So maybe not. I mean, it's directionally, you may say, yes, I'd rather have the metals than the currency, but, and clearly that would be the case in Venezuela. You would just, what I just said would be out the window when you have inflation rates of like 6 million %, so it doesn't matter. But in the U.S., no matter how you look at inflation, you know, you don't have to believe the official numbers, but I don't think the numbers are 25%. So there is I think it would harm. I've gotten emails from people today saying they wouldn't buy if it was an 8% tax. So I do think it is an issue for many people. We've got a few other gold and silver stories. Let me just see what your comments are on this, because I've got an interesting story from the COMEX, and I got a lot of stories we got to get to. But I wanted to cover this first so that we don't miss any of the comments or I forget what I was talking about. Let's see what else we have. Would the U.S. Mint be paying 6% tax now for planchets? No, because the U.S. Mint is not governed by, it's not in Ohio, it's not governed. Oh. Because you're saying that because the Sunshine Minting Company, who makes the planchets, is selling them to the U.S. Mint. I don't think so, because it's a sales tax, the 6%, which means that you're buying, well, no, hold on. If you're buying the product in state, then they would charge 6%. That's a very good question. Whether the U.S. Mint will have to pay, if the exemption goes away, the 6% sales tax when they buy stuff from the Sunshine Mint, those planchets, to make the Silver Eagles. Well, in which case would mean that we're paying the 6% on the Silver Eagles, if that actually is true. So not only is the authorized purchaser paying $2 extra a coin for the Silver Eagle, but if indeed the U.S. Mint has to pay a Ohio sales tax, they either will switch planchet providers, which means there may be a shortage, or they're just going to pass on that 6% sales tax to the authorized purchasers, who will pass it along to the consumers, making it a disincentive to buy. I would think you already got a 16-20% premium on Silver Eagles, current year Silver Eagles, and then you add another 6% on that. It's not good. Very good question, Jack. Very good question. All right, what else? And saying they're going to be valuable. All right. I think that's it for now. Okay, let's get on now to some of these other stories. I just ran across this today. COMEX on their website is bragging that they trade the equivalent of 27 million ounces of gold a day. That's 840 tons a day. That's about what India imports in physical gold in a year. It's just a stunning amount of you know, when they talk about paper gold trading. But it does highlight that there is this type of demand for this paper product, that people will buy and trade this. The people who buy and trade COMEX contracts, or some even on the LVA, they're not gold bugs. They're just trading price. They could be trading seriously. They could be trading mug prices. They just like the volatility, and they trade back and forth. It's a very interesting dynamic. Okay, let's get into, I got a couple of the gold stories here. For those of you who don't know what Brown's bottom is, it's back in the news. It's been 20 years since the then Exchequer, the guy who was like the Treasury Secretary of Great Britain, dumped a bunch of gold at the bottom of the market. I think like $350 an ounce. He later became, Gordon Brown, I think, Prime Minister. So they didn't hold that against him. But that is now 20 years on. And Great Britain, the United Kingdom, as you've seen in those charts, is has less gold than Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan as a result of that dumpage. Here's another one with this fraud stuff. See, they like to talk about gold attracting fraud, Bitcoin attracting fraud. Now, anything of value attracts fraud. But of course, this article here, this sleepy Indian town is a mecca of gold jewelry. They can't just leave it there. They got to say in a smuggling hotspot. So there's some fraud going on there. And here's the point I was making earlier, that high gold price, they're saying, which I don't know if it's that high, but it's higher than, it's been, gold's held up pretty well the last 3 or 4 years. It fell from 1900, but it's played around in the 1100 to 1300, 1350 range. But they're saying here, high gold prices have dulled excitement around Hindu festival. So she says here there's no... But this is also... I like when they take these anecdotals. Someone says there's no compelling reason to buy gold at this point. Well, that's one person's shopping behavior, and they're not going to buy gold at this point. Could be no compelling reason because they don't have the money. Could be... Who knows? It's not like when they make these points, it's not like no one is buying gold in India. There may be a slight drop off, but then they like to use these quotes that there's no compelling reason to buy gold at this point. And obviously, the people that are buying it find that there is a compelling reason to buy it. They've bought it, so that's compelling enough. Okay, one other thing in the markets. This is an interesting statistic. Nothing new to you guys, but developing economies, emerging economies have boosted their sovereign debts to about 50% of GDP at the end of 2018, up from 34% in 2008. And remember, that's all in dollars. That's what keeps the dollar afloat. Is a lot of people think it's only because the United States sells goods to China and China buys treasuries. That's part of it, and foreigners buying U.S. treasuries is part of the demand for treasuries, but there's domestic demand for treasuries. But the real demand for dollars is actually in the rest of the world's economies. They run on dollars, so they need dollars. This has nothing to do with borrowing money from the U.S. Or the U.S. lending money to them. When an economy like Turkey issues bonds, or China, and they issue them in dollars, they need the dollars to pay them back. It's not because they owe the United States money. It's not because the United States owes them money. It's because they're running their economy on dollars. That's what creates the real demand for the dollar. So if China was to dump treasuries, it really would not be that. Everyone thinks that's a big deal. Russia dumped all its treasuries. It's a spit in the bucket. They dumped their $110 billion worth of treasuries. It's no big deal. China has 1.2 trillion of them. I'm sure they can unload them and they'll get absorbed into the market. The real dollar demand comes from the world actually running their economies on dollars. And all these developing economies boosting their sovereign debt, they're not issuing their sovereign debt in their local currency. They're issuing them in dollars, and that creates the need for dollars to pay back all of that debt. Just an important point to keep in mind. It's not just when China is going to crush the dollar by dumping treasury. And China itself runs on dollars. The state-owned enterprises, state-owned banks issue dollar-denominated debt. Even the government of China has issued dollar-denominated debt. All right, let's get into the... let's do the crypto first. Then we'll get into Trump turmoil, then we'll take your comments. I don't know if you believe this one, but polls will always get what they want out of them. Here's one. 11% of Americans own Bitcoin, and 20% of those between 18 and 34 own Bitcoin. This particular poll done by Harris says major awareness increase since 2017. I don't know. I mean, I haven't taken a poll. I don't talk to people. I don't ask them if they own Bitcoin, but I just don't think that. Well, who knows? Let me know what you guys think. If you think 11% of Americans own Bitcoin and 20, that's 1 in 5 people between 18 and 34. I think that's a bit high, but I don't know. We're not going to have a sorry about that. The price of Bitcoin's up, and you get all these shills back again. CNBC, Bitcoin is up 60% this year, and Jim Murio sees more gains ahead. Yeah, when the price goes up, they see gains. When the price is going down, they see losses. We are back, Jack, and tossing Molotovs and Ann. I'm on top of it. I can see it when it happens. Let me just give you a few more of these. What happens when the price of Bitcoin goes up. Look at this one. Talk about CNBC pumping. That was CNBC futures. This is CNBC fast money. Just saying. Bitcoin up this week 13%. They put a rocket there. I mean, you don't see that. You don't see this for gold or silver ever. They're not cheerleading. They clearly, and it's not just CNBC, it's a lot of the other outlets. They are cheerleading cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and so on. Fidelity is doing it, E-Trade, Charles Schwab. They're not talking about how can we get adoption of gold and silver into the system. You've never seen that. And that's why I'm saying that Wall Street wants this crypto bubble. I mean, all you have to do is look at the statements that we've talked about this the past week, giving plenty of examples of how they're working on adoption. Why do they care about adoption? Because they want to make a lot of money. They can convince people to buy this stuff. Then they're going to make a fortune buying it and selling it and trading platforms and storing and futures and ETFs. And they know it's big money. And they know they can do tokenize basically every asset on the planet. Every company will have a token. That's what they're looking to do. That's why they want adoption. This is bigger than a carbon tax scheme for them because there's no, it can just make it up. These tokens are worth X amount. Look what they've done with Tesla and other unicorn stocks. If they can sell stocks, they still have that lingering, nagging, well, maybe the investors are going to say these companies don't make any money. Hasn't worked yet, but or with mortgages, they have to worry about people being able to pay them, and it's hard to keep issuing mortgages, and the party eventually stopped. Here, the token party, the crypto party, it can go on as long as they can keep pulling tokens out and throwing them on the market, and as long as they're registered and regulated and on exchanges, and they got bit licenses, stable coins. There's no end to the amount of money they can make on cryptocurrency. So that's why I've been saying I think that, look, in 2017, how much knuckleheads made on cryptocurrencies with YouTube channels pumping this token or that token. I mean, this is what Wall Street and Silicon Valley do for a living. They're professionals. And they still raised billions of dollars in 2017. They drove the price of Bitcoin up to $20,000. The overall crypto market was close to $1 trillion at the peak at the end of 2017. So when Wall Street sees those kind of numbers and they saw how easily the average, the amateur pumpers were able to make fortunes, they realize they can 10x that. Anyway, it's just my point of view. It's not investment advice, but I don't see any other reason why they're pushing this the way they are. Here you got Forbes talking about Bitcoin suddenly nudging 6,000 as Ethereum rockets. Here's why via Forbes. Now, why are they talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum rocketing? Here's another story. This is the news BTC. Bitcoin and Ethereum propel crypto markets $10 billion surge. This is all game changer stuff here. Now, here's one which is very interesting. And Rory and I talked about this concept on occasion. If this particular individual is saying that if the Fidelity institutional investors buy 1%, the 1% rule, if they buy 1% or allocate 1% of their funds to cryptocurrencies, it's going to add a few $1,000s to the price. Now, the 1% rule, this is my 1% rule here. If you lose it all, your portfolio loses 1%. So the idea is if you have $100 and 1% is $1, you bet $1. If you lose it, you lose 1%. If it rises 10 times, meaning if it goes to $10, well, now you've made 10% on your $100, right? It's up 10%. That's a great return. If it rises 100-fold, meaning that $1 turns into $100, now your portfolio has $200, that means the entire portfolio has doubled. So the 1% rule makes sense, especially for institutional investors, because they always need to have a little speculative pop. Well, if they all go into it as crypto as Fidelity and ErisX and TD Ameritrade and Bakkt and all these other entities, E-Trade, are promoting this. Microsoft is a part of Bakkt, and then you will get a pop in this stuff, and it's self-fulfilling. Here's Microsoft working with Ethereum applications, and then also Microsoft working not on Bakkt, but working with what are they working with? They're working with Starbucks on, here it is, putting the coffee sales on the blockchain. So this is clearly where this is headed. It's all going to be digitized, blockchainized, Starbucks to track coffee using Microsoft blockchain service. Now, this is they're part of Bakkt. All you have to do is add in the New York Stock Exchange, who's the other partner in Boston Consulting, and you have the whole platform where they sell you Bitcoin futures, and then you can have them physically delivered, which means you don't get them. They put them in their storage and they charge you for that. But if you want to take them out, they'll help you convert them into dollars so you can spend them seamlessly at Starbucks and a whole bunch of other places. This is how they, quote, drive adoption. And essentially, if you think it through, it basically is an entire replacement of every financial asset they have. I'm not talking about Bitcoin with this Bitcoin taking over the world and everything is going to be Bitcoin. I'm talking about banks just moving everything over, changing all the security certificates into tokens. So instead of buying Apple shares, you buy Apple tokens, and then you have all types of other attention tokens. And this is the biggest, it's probably even bigger than the internet. I'm not talking about Bitcoin. I'm just talking about moving everything into tokens and having everything regulated, taxed, tracked, traced, organized. This is huge money. That's why they're pushing it, in my opinion. What else is happening? We got to get into this Bitcoin mining stuff. I know I got a lot here, but it's worth keeping abreast of this, because this is what's happening. And people are just, oh, this is evil, this is no good. Well, it's what I'm only reporting on what it is. I can't change what it is. This, to me, seems to be what is happening. It's fairly obvious. Anyone who's paying attention, what most people are doing, they're not paying attention. They're just resisting hearing about it because they don't want to hear about it. Or they have some other Bitcoin fantasy in their brains that it's going to kill the banks and everyone's going to walk around with Bitcoin in their pockets. And anyway, I just see this as just how the entire financial system, payment system, corporate system is moving, is into this blockchain stuff here. Anyway, we were talking about the 1% rule, and this particular individual was making the analysis that if institutions just put 1% it will really drive the price up. And they're mentioning how Fidelity is expected to launch Bitcoin trading services to institutional investors in the next few weeks. Now, Rory and I had spoken, I had done a few years ago an analysis of what if a small 1%, 2%, 3% of the U.S. workforce were to invest in physical silver. And I had done these charts where I showed if they invested $20 a week or whatever it was, up to $100 a week, up to $400 a month, what that would do to the silver stocks. And it would drain, even at a minimum, if just small percentages of the workforce invested small amounts into physical silver, they would eat up half the physical silver supply pretty quickly. That's not even counting if people in India did it, China did it, Canada, Australia, Italy, France, it's just the United States. Now, it's all nice to think about, but that's never going to happen. It's not. Why? Who's pushing it? In fact, if you work at a corporation, most of the companies don't even allow in your 401ks any type of precious metal funds. So they're not pushing it. But what you see happening here, we saw in France, for example. France is now allowed to buy, we talked about this, and to add into their insurance portfolios cryptocurrencies. And here's Binance Research, how much are traditional insurance funds likely to invest in crypto assets after the introduction of new French laws. This is being pushed across the board, which is the reverse of what's happening with gold and silver. They're trying to downplay that. Here, institutions in Bitcoin and the 1% rule. This was back in April I was talking about this. So we definitely see this push of the institutions to move, to put things on the blockchain, to introduce these cryptocurrencies, to tax them, to promote them. What else here? Now, Rakuten, we talked about this. Just another reminder. This is where I see things headed, where this company owns a bank, a social media company, a trading platform, and eventually they'll just, and also an e-commerce platform. So eventually you'll have everything with your one preferred e-commerce giant, where you'll have your banking, where you'll keep your crypto, where they're going to sell you crypto. Then you'll be on your social media platform. That could even be some type of decentralized or centralized platform where you trade tokens on it. It just seems to me that this whole thing is heading in that direction, and you're seeing large companies moving in that direction. I wouldn't be surprised to see Amazon or eBay buying a trading platform, a crypto trading platform, like this Japanese e-commerce giant has done, or setting up their own social media and then adding tokens to it. This is obvious to me what's happening. Now, what's going to be successful and what's not, I have no idea. And it's not an endorsement to buy any particular cryptocurrencies. I just view this as more akin to, you saw what happened during the internet. There were .com companies and there were bricks and mortar companies. Well, now everything's a .com company. A lot of the original .com companies are gone. But the world is now a .com internet place. And I think we're going to move into a blockchain cryptocurrency place. It doesn't have to be Bitcoin, doesn't have to be any of them, but clearly this is where we're moving. Now here's Eddie. He's a gold reporter, but he's following cryptocurrencies. I think he's at Reuters or Bloomberg. Very, very smart writer. Knows what's going on, but he says if Bitcoin gets above 6,000 level, it'll pull in a lot of technical traders. There's just too much attention being put on this. The dismissing is gone. It's all about adoption and getting people interested in this. And Litecoin was up 100% here, according to this, in the first quarter. And then you have next week, you have the big crypto conference, which is Consensus. And people pay like $1,900 to go to this. There's like 6,000 people are going to go to it. Again, you don't see this at gold and silver. There's no silver conference that can command a $1,900 price and have head of the SEC there, have Congress people there, which are going to be at this, have CEOs from all major companies. This is what's happening, whether you want to know about it or not. They have New York Blockchain Week. There's other conferences. It's not just this Consensus one. All right, let's see if there's anything else. All right, let's get into the mining, and then we're going to talk about the Trump turmoil. Now, mining is a big deal. First of all, we heard a lot of the mining is done in China, and there was this story coming out of China that they were going to ban crypto mining, and of course, your silver friends were all excited because they're going to shut it down, and then it's lights out for Bitcoin, then they arrest everybody, and then silver skyrockets. Well, it didn't happen. This particular article was China to ban, or YouTube, to ban Bitcoin mining by May 7th. Didn't happen, and even if it did, it would just move somewhere else. But it gave hope to some people who think that this is just going to go away because of a YouTube channel. Well, we saw here Belarus nuclear mining. Belarus will be the first country with nuclear-powered Bitcoin mining. They're setting up a nuclear power plant, and the president of the country is talking about using it, also the excess energy, to mine Bitcoin. And why not? It's just like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. You got gold in your backyard, mine it. Put it on your central bank's balance sheet. I'm not saying that Belarus is going to mine Bitcoin and put it on its balance sheet, but you never know. This here, clean energy, not coal. Bitcoin miners at a Fidelity mining summit. Now, why does Fidelity have a crypto mining summit? Well, they do. Make the case for their industry as the driver of clean energy adoption rather than ecological disaster. A lot of money in this. So they put money into windmills and solar panels so they can get their Bitcoin mining done. So they're saying they're actually going to drive clean energy adoption rather than cause the destruction of the environment and global warming. Winklevoss twins, the guys that make all that money from, I think they were eBay. Well, they bought a lot of Bitcoin, and they have an exchange, they have a stable coin, and they have a Bitcoin ETF pending. And now they want to invest in a company, or they are investing in a company that's using excess natural gas in order to mine Bitcoin. So you've got nuclear Bitcoin mining, you've got excess natural gas Bitcoin mining, and then there was another one I saw here, Quebec. Quebec has a lot of cheap energy. I guess it's hydroelectric up there. And now they're looking to move into and become the biggest Bitcoin miner. And if China decides it's going to get out of it and wants to lose that business, then there's other places where there's cheap energy, and it will just go there. And it looks like it says Quebec province is tapping the Bitcoin mining market to improve its annual economic projections. Helps. China doesn't want to give that up. That's money. They got cheap electricity. They can make money off of it. The region's energy regulator, I think, has approved double the amount of electricity for Bitcoin mining. So that's where it's headed. I mean, you can look at channels like this and tell you it's all over, digital illusions of wealth, and it's going away, and everyone's going to be buying silver. Okay. Believe what you wish. All right, let's move on now to Trump turmoil. There's 3 stories here. The first one is on his taxes. So Charlie Mnuchin, whatever his name is, I don't know his first name, but he's the Treasury Secretary of the United States, and he's basically said, no way, you're not getting his taxes, on the basis that there's no legitimate tax reason, or no legitimate legislative reason for them to have his taxes. And there's some obscure rule that allows Congress to ask for them. I don't know how it's going to work out. But there's people talking on Twitter that now they have to lock Mnuchin up because he's not complying with this tax request. Then you have another one. McGahn. Those of you who sat through my 2-part explanation of the Emmett Flood letter, the counsel to the president, I mentioned this was going to happen as a result of that letter. Was the president was essentially saying through that letter, look, we've been transparent through this whole 2 years. We handed over documents. We did not stop the Mueller investigation. You guys did everything you wanted. It's over now. And now Congress, they've got those 200 pages of obstruction of justice, which Mueller didn't charge him with obstruction of justice, but he just wrote a bunch of junk that the Congress can look at and say, let's investigate this. Never should have done that. That should not have been in the report. If you're not going to charge somebody, you don't disparage them with a bunch of stuff that's not been litigated, a bunch of stuff that has not been even disputed. It's just stuff you put in there. And in a sense, it's unethical to do that. You're either going to charge somebody and then you tell everybody what the person did and that person has a chance to defend themselves, or you don't charge them. You make a declination decision and you shred the files. You don't put them out to Congress. But that's what they did, and Bill Barr allowed that to go out. But now the Trump team is saying, look, I know you guys want to keep looking at this stuff. You want to ask McCain, my attorney, White House attorney, former attorney Don McGahn, a bunch of questions. You're going to try to use it to impeach me. Well, not going to happen. Basically saying executive privilege from now on. This thing is over. I put up with this for 2 years. You're not getting them. Now, same thing with Barr. Barr went to the Congress one day. The next day he was supposed to go to the Senate. He went to the Senate one day. The next day he was supposed to go to the Congress. And then he didn't want to interview him. They wanted to have their staff lawyers interview him. And he said, to hell with this, I'm not coming. And now they want to lock him up because he's not turning over the entire unredacted portions of the Mueller report, which he has no obligation to do. And also, there's certain parts of that he can't because his grand jury testimony. They're saying that he should sue the courts to get the grand jury testimony approved for release. So we have all this going on, but really all this is trying to keep the Russian collusion and the obstruction of justice charges alive. And in a way, what they're doing is they're obstructing justice by going after Bill Barr, because he's actually working on other stuff that's going to boomerang back to them, talking about the origins of the Mueller probe, not the Mueller probe, but the entire Russian investigation into the Trump campaign. Interesting, FBI director, what's his name? Nondescript guy. Anyway, he was on, the director, is his name Cray or something? Why don't I know his name? He was at Congress today, and they asked him, do you think they were spying? It was the same woman, Jean Shaheen from New Hampshire, if Christopher Wray is his name, if they were spying. And if you listen to the quote, I wish I had the quote for you here. She said something about illegal spying, and he said, I don't have any evidence of that. So everybody jumped in that saying, oh, he's disagreeing with his boss. Well, no, his boss said, I believe they were spying. The question is whether it was authorized. They're both saying the same thing, but it sounded like Christopher Wray was saying, no, I don't think there was any spying. No, he was saying that he doesn't know of any spying that was done that was unauthorized. Well, why would he know that? They haven't investigated that, and he hasn't been the FBI director that long, so why would he know if there was unauthorized spying? And again, they don't like to telegraph too much what they know as well, so I think technically he was correct in saying, and actually in line with Bill Barr, that he's not aware of any unauthorized illegal spying. Because if he was, he'd have people arrested already. All right, so that's going on with Trump, and I guess that's it for tonight, other than whatever y'all are saying in the comments. And let me just put up the fundraising page. You guys have been good about that. I appreciate that. Donating via Bitcoin, Litecoin, Subscribestar, Patreon, PayPal, and even sending me I get some very nice things in the mail. That's very kind of you. Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire, 03820. Also, don't forget to order your Smaulgld mugs. Go to smaulgld.com. All the offers are there for the mugs and the other Smaulgld merchandise, as well as links to SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, and Golden Eagle coins. So there's plenty of offers on the smaulgld.com site. It does help the site out if you buy your products there, your coffee there, your emergency food, your gold, silver, and your mugs. So thank you very much for doing that and remembering to do it, because if you're going to buy these products anyway, please do them through the site. So let's see what's left in the comments. All right. Tossing Molotovs. Federal government does not pay sales tax. There you go. Does not pay state sales tax, says Tossing Molotovs. Supreme Court ruled on that nearly 200 years ago. Well, thank you for that. I should have known that, but I didn't know that. But it's a good question by Jack for asking it. So at least we know we're safe from the 6% surcharge on the federal government. Okay. Thank you, Tossing Molotovs. Canada bans a post office from sending non-government minted bullion coins and dust. Yeah. Well, they're protecting the Canadian mint, probably. All right. Just looking for comments. Fiona is here. Let's see. Jack Trudeau. We got a lot of nice comments, but I can't. You guys are talking about your property. All right, Smaulgld, Johnny on the spot. How many of your listeners do you think are Canadian from outside the U.S.? Oh, about 10-15%. I know there's a few on here right now. I don't discriminate against Canadians. Although the shipping is more expensive to Canada. All right, I think that's it. But I do want to thank you for joining me tonight and joining me each and every night. And we will see you tomorrow. So I'm going to give you the Bernie countdown. All right, so I want to thank you for joining. So we're going to give you the 10-second countdown. And if there's not any questions, then I'm going to say goodnight on behalf of Lewis. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1%, 0. Have a good night.